at BNC, we are kicking off Black History Month with a look at some of the most prominent figures, of course, we know, who have helped shape and mold our culture. So joining us now is former Maryland Democratic Chairman, Dr. Maya Rockeymore Cummings. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So Dr. Cummings, I want to know your thoughts on President Biden's first full week in office. Do you think that he is going to deliver on his promises when it comes to, obviously, the economy, the pandemic, and his promise to Black Americans?
I think that he has shown that he is very serious about following through on this equity agenda that he has to address racial discrimination in this country, while also addressing issues that are important to the Black community like COVID-19. And so he's gotten off to a flying start. He has been, of course, using the power of his pen in order to push this agenda so far. Not just focused on COVID relief, but also on issues like housing. And so I'm incredibly encouraged. I think that President Biden has this issue at the center of his agenda, and he is seeking to make a difference in the time he has in office.
And Dr. Cummings, you are multifaceted, multi-hyphenate, okay, in the political arena. You're a political scientist, policy expert, author, commentator, like everything. What would you like to see going forward with this new administration?
So I'd really like to see them, fully embrace, people of diverse backgrounds, and they have at the highest levels of government, but also making sure that their sub-cabinet is filled with people who are diverse, who understand the approach to equity in terms of policy, so that when we're talking about the implementation of public policy that's important for diverse communities, such as African Americans, that we have people who can steer the ship in the right direction. I think that, we are in a very opportune time in the history of this country, and Black Americans need to be paying attention and be fully focused on making sure that they are steering the ship of this Biden-Harris administration and making their desires and wishes known. So I will continue to do that in my role, and certainly, make sure that this administration lives up to its promise.
Are you happy with the representation we're seeing in Biden's cabinet?
I do think that there has been a lot of diversity. I do think that we could see some more high-level African Americans in positions in his cabinet. But I'm still waiting, holding out hope for other appointments. We've only begun to see the very beginning of his appointment strategy, and so I expect that there will be more rollouts of very high-profile African Americans in very serious positions.
And now, what's coming up, Trump's second impeachment trial. Is there anything else politically that you are keeping an eye on right now?
Absolutely. So first of all, we need to pay attention to white extremism in government. And I think that it's very critical to understand that there were a lot of police officers and retired and active duty military who were participating in the insurrection on January 6th. And so that means that, yes, we've got a problem in the United States where white identity politics has infiltrated our government. And I do think that we need to actually widen the lens, and the FBI is widening the lens to understand what the connections to white identity politics are in Congress itself, and how potential Congress people may have colluded with the extremists for the January 6th event. This is a very core and central issue that all of us should be paying attention to, because if police officers are actually active in this movement, then we have to question, how much of the, the political of the executions that we've been seeing of Black men in particular on street corners across America have to do with this organized infiltration of our government and agents of government. So that is another issue I've been following very carefully.
And Dr. Cummings, I do want to know your thoughts of when you saw that footage from the Capitol that day. You've been in politics for so long. Seeing that insurrection, what was your first thought?
Well, interesting that you say that, because my first thought is this is what the lynch mob looks like. This is what it looked like when African Americans were being strung up on trees across America. You know, the intensity of the hatred, the intensity of the anger, the riot mob. This was it, the lynch mob. They even erected a gallows outside of the U.S. Capitol building. So, we got to see up close and personal what white rage looks like. And that is what we saw on January 6th. My second, thought was that I knew many of the people, the staffers, the members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, frankly, that were inside of the building that day. And so I feared for their safety and felt like this was a very, very serious issue and that we need to actually prosecute all participants to the fullest extent of the law. And by the way, the third thing I thought was that where was the security? I mean, the double standards in terms of how protesters who are exercising their constitutional right to protest, Black Lives Matters protesters, were treated in terms of the tremendous show of force of police officers was not apparent on January 6th, even though all indications were that this was going to be a violent action.
And lastly, Dr. Cummings, as we celebrate the first day of Black History Month, you were married to the late Congressman Elijah Cummings. So I just want to know, can you tell us about his legacy and how you are hoping to carry it on before we leave here?
Absolutely. So Elijah wrote a book in the last years of his life called "We're Better Than This: My Fight for the Future of Our Democracy." And in this book, he basically shares, his fears and concerns for the country, but also the belief that we're better than this. Elijah was born in the Jim Crow South, and he used the tools of the law and the Constitution in order to challenge the system to become better, along with people like, of course, Martin Luther King and John Lewis. And so he rose to become a very powerful member of Congress and viewed his perch on the House Oversight and Reform Committee as a way to make sure that we continue to guarantee progress for African Americans and people of all backgrounds. And so now we all must carry the mantle to ensure that we are pushing this system to be the very best, particularly at this moment in time where we face threats on all sides. We need to insist on our democratic rights, and we need to insist that those who want to roll back the hands of time be put back into the box that Donald Trump actually unleashed. And so we've got work to do to make sure that our children aren't litigating the same issues that we had to litigate 100 years ago, 100 years from now.
And Dr. Cummings, could you talk more about that book and where can people go and find it?
Yeah, We're Better Than This is available on every platform. You can get it at Walmart, you can get it on Amazon. You can order it from your local bookstore, your Black-owned bookstore. It's everywhere across the country. And if you don't like to read, listen to the audiobook. Lawrence Fishburne does a masterful interpretation of Elijah's voice. We got Nancy Pelosi doing a reading in that book and others. And so, I really encourage you to pick it up in all of its forms.
All right, Dr. Cummings, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You have a good day.
You too. Thank you for having me.